The land of Harambee, tunainuka pamoja.
Tanzania is ready, nguvu ni moja.
Pearl of Africa, welcome everyone.
Hello, a very fantastic chilly evening here in Arua. Wherever you are catching us live from, let's say thank you so much for always being hooked to Sararights TV. We are always very proud that you guys are giving us that energy, you guys are giving us that morale of always being here to give you the best in terms of the sports in there. Of course, a lot of key sporting talking points here, which I'll be delving with you into those various sporting headlines that are making headlines here in Uganda. Of course, the biggest one is in Uganda right now. As I talk, things are not really moving so well to a number of clubs here in Uganda. Of course, we shall all start all this from home. Of course, internationally, Liverpool will be facing a team in the next of Newcastle United in the Premier League. Of course, Arsenal Football Club are again looking for what we call a centre-back, a left-sided centre-back. Who the centre-back is, I'll be talking about that at a later time. In there, of course, the biggest one is with the FIFA format that they have kind of introduced newly into Uganda. Of course, it's not bringing attention into Uganda, but we shall be looking into that into the list. Of course, the biggest one is now State House piling pressure on FIFA. Of course, I'll be breaking down for you the information at a later time. Of course, you can always be part of us by actually dialing the studio number. That's 0393 2282. That's 099. Of course, you will always be with us in for business. In case of adverts, you will always be here. In case of other sponsors with deals, you call that number. You will always be actually right here with us here at Sararights. Of course, this show is always sponsored by Sabiri Rama Global Ventures Limited. Of course, they're the biggest and the sole sponsor of the show. Of course, they deal in a number of activities. They deal in the bids. They deal in supply of goods, supply of building materials, and as well construction activities. Of course, they also do deal in what we call money transaction. What you have to do is look for the services of Sabirma Global Ventures Limited. You'll be sorted. Remember, our office number is 0393 228292 for business. You can always reach us, and we'll be breaking down for you what actually you need in here at Sararights TV. Of course, let's pick it from home and talk about on Top Praga Football Club. Of course, the club is working on a bigger project. Of course, it's now looking at it's actually a project of having a new jersey. Of course, it's a very new jersey. For those who have never actually seen the glimpses of the jersey, of course, it's a very beautiful one. Of course, you have to prepare yourself as the fan of the team. Of course, we all know on Tupraka being a community-based club, they always have that uniqueness when it comes to actually giving out jerseys. Of course, the jersey is always the biggest and the best in Uganda. Of course, the products that they always go for, they're always high quality and things of market value. Of course, this now calls for fans to get a register to see that you have to be a registered fan for you to get that discount in these jerseys. Of course, in case they're selling the jerseys at 50,000, when you are a registered fan of the Arua Football Club, you'll be getting these jerseys. Maybe at 40,000, maybe at 35,000. That's what I don't know yet, but I can tell you, if you are a registered fan, you will always be getting that discount. Of course, you have to register yourself to be the fan of the only at 20,000. At only 20,000, look for the services and offices of the Football Club, and you get registered as a fan early enough such that you'll be getting that discount, you'll be benefited from that discount. Of course, you all know the economy is kind of very harsh when it comes to money, and of course buying that beautiful jersey of our own team here in Arua or in West in the names of the Football Club is the biggest that you ever done. Of course, Ontopraka as a brand has got its connections, and I'm quite sure the people who are behind this team are really doing an amazing job with the team. With the team on Football Club in there. Of course, Papito Devgan and together with Walter Bazagli, they are clicking so fast in the team of the Football Club. So what you have to do is save your money early enough to see that the beautiful jersey is coming in for you. Of course, they have got various activities that will be actually be transferred at Golden Stadium, because the players already in training. I can tell you that everything is on high gear with their on the Football Club. This is our team here. We have to support this team massively. Of course, they are really fighting hard to see that the team goes back to the Southern Ghana Premier League. Of course, this is now the transition point that the team is taking to go back to the Southern Ghana Premier League. And coming up with that beautiful jersey is one of the beautiful things. Save money for your child, save money for your children, for your family, save money for your wife, for yourself as well. You have to get that beautiful jersey of it's a beautiful, I can tell you, it's a beautiful one. And me too, equally, I'll be having that jersey of Ontopraka Football Club in here. Of course, that is the latest I can give you about the team in there. Of course, Ontopraka being our own club here, we have to rally behind this team to see that the team goes back to the Southern Ghana Premier League. Of course, it's not Kalaba Football Club who are into the Southern Ghana Premier League, but having a team in the name of Ontopraka Football Club in the Southern Ghana Premier League will be our pride. As West Nile, us here in Arua, it will be our pride. Of course, a team like Ontopraka Football Club really needed to be up there in the Southern Ghana Premier League in there. Let's first talk about the biggest one that's making headlines in Uganda. Of course, it's the new format that is causing chaos in Uganda. Of course, the biggest I can tell you is State House now putting pressure on FIFA. This is what is happening latest, and State House now trying to put pressure on FIFA on some key areas that I'll break for you shortly in there. Of course, two clubs have already disagreed with FIFA, the new format. Of course, the record champions, AC Villa, with 17 points, are saying that they are not going to be supporting this this new format. Equally, Vipers, who are having a 7 trophy to their name, is also saying that they are not buying the new format. Of course, this also come in regard to both the CEO and the club president of Vipers. I'm talking about Edgar Watson. He's the CEO of SCV. Of course, he kind of came out boldly to say that this is one of the bad ideas that FIFA is trying to actually generate into Uganda. And there's that view that's coming up from Vipers president. I'm talking about Lawrence Murindo. He's also saying that that is actually one of the worst ideas that Federation has kind of actually introduced into Uganda football, and that is not piling a lot of pressure on FIFA from State House. Of course, this is not based on the fact that Uganda Cranes in the Chan tournament had got an awful performance in the Chan tournament. They expected Uganda Cranes to have got that big performance in the Chan tournament, and now coming with a new idea of introducing a new league format, and again injecting 2.5 billion into Ugandan shillings. Where are this money is coming from is not the $1 million question that FIFA needed to act. Of course, the State House is not coming at board to investigate the ideas and the brain behind all these initiatives that FIFA is trying to come up with. Of course, they expected FIFA to still stay put with the format of the Southern Ghana Premier League, the old format. Of course, this format comes with a lot of expenses. It comes with a lot of other issues. Of course, clubs will be having a lot of challenges. I can tell you, clubs will be facing the consequences most. Of course, the lion's share goes to FIFA. Of course, we all know clubs only have got 80% share of their money. Of course, not the new format indicates that all the 16 teams have to play only one headed single-phase affair. You have to play the first round. In case Calvary goes and plays for a team in the names of KCC or the Vipers, that side of Kampala, those teams will never come here to Arua to come and play a team in the names of Calvary Football Club here in West Nile. It will never happen. Of course, that balance, when it comes to revenue collection from the gates, of course, we all know our clubs here in the country majorly relies hugely on the gate collection. That will be limited. That clearly says to you that clubs will financially struggle in the new format of the Southern Ghana Premier League. That's one of the biggest things. And again, clubs will always be actually having what you call a lot of expenses when it comes to away matches. Clubs will be having that expense in that regard. Of course, they'll be having that transportation. FIFA will not be having that actual. Matches FIFA is trying to give that quarterly actual money to the to clubs. Of course, it will never be yielding any fruit. Of course, clubs majorly benefit from what we call the gate collections, and that is something which is not attracting a lot of opinions from different stakeholders in the country. And it's not down to stakeholders, the State House already. You understand? Now, State House is not trying to come up with this initiative, which is something that is going to be so negative about Ugandan football. So, by the State House actually investigation, they're saying that FIFA, through his actual president, they are supposed to have what we call the old format. Of course, this is not going to be a new format. Of course, teams or clubs or the stakeholders have to get adapted to, the fans have to get used to it. It will take a longer process. And Uganda performing very poorly in what you call the Chan tournament, it raises eyebrows to those who love football, to those who kind of play football, and those who are investing in football. It is not raising eyebrows. And I can tell you, Edison, the CEO of AC Villa, said that AC Villa is not going to buy this idea. Of course, Lawrence Morindo, former football president, another club president of Vipers, is not saying that this is one of the biggest that FIFA is not trying to bring in. Of course, they are saying this is an idea that will come in probably make clubs go down. Of course, clubs will never be getting that beneficial actually rewards from this kind of initiative. Of course, it's gonna be one of the disrespectful things to clubs, and it is not bringing down. It's not bringing down the level of Ugandan football. By the time when you expect Ugandan football to grow in, you bring it in a new format. And this format is kind of complicated. And it takes a long period of time for teams to understand. And it's a format that actually allows players to sign more than 2 years contract in Uganda. Unless you are on a 30 plus, that's when you can sign a 1 year contract in Uganda, which is something which is hugely affecting our clubs. And it will make clubs to be financially stable. If you're not financially stable, definitely you'll be having that challenges. Of course, FIFA always make it mandatory that a club has to pay players. Now, when you're paying players, of course, you're not introducing this kind of format. When you don't be having most of your games away, of course, once you play a home game, at least you have to get around 95% of your revenue to get connection. If you don't get that, definitely you struggle. This is one of the biggest things. And City House not trying to put pressure on FIFA, and I can tell you, this is something which can easily be changed in Uganda. It can be changed. Of course, the narrative is not that the performance of Uganda Cranes and the new format will never click. So they expected the FIFA to still use the old format. In case they are supposed to amend this, it's supposed to be a gradual thing. Of course, you're supposed to introduce this thing maybe 5 years, in 5 years plan. You need to have a plan. This thing has just been done abruptly, and it is not causing tension in the country, which is a very big mess to Ugandan football. We don't know how Moses Magogo is trying to rule football in Uganda. Of course, he's not trying to rule football like as if he's trying to rule his personal family. Of course, the ESCOMs, the people who are around Engineer Moses Magogo, I think they never advised him well with this kind of initiative. And I don't know who advised him to come actually with this kind of initiative in Uganda. Of course, this kind of format is real here in Africa, and it's not making things complicated. Now, the best idea here they came up to was that they wanted to see that football in Uganda is kind of competitive. Now, when you want to make a football, to be competitive in Uganda, how can you promote a team which has never fought for it? I can tell you, a team in the name of Young Elephants was promoting the football big league, minus even attending promotion. You see, those are things that kind of raise eyebrows. And I can tell you, this format is never going to click very well in Uganda here. And it's not going to make football to come down. Football never develop. Of course, when you wanted to develop something, you need to have that uniqueness. You need to have that gradual introduction to it. Clubs have to adapt. Clubs have to copy. You see, that kind of briefing was not done by FIFA. And they expect on a 2 days meeting with the club CEOs, with the club president, you expect all these things to click very well in Ugandan football. Our league is still amateur. Amateur, I can tell you, it's still amateur. It's not up to that level of professionalism. Of course, things will be adapted at a low speed. And coming up with this kind of format is going to be one of the biggest things. And to me, I just look at it as being actually a democratic thing. Of course, you can't introduce something which you have never actually given enough information, to the stakeholders. Even most of the journalists were not aware about this kind of format. You have to dig information, to find this kind of stories. You see, it's making things to be very complicated, and it's making work for clubs to be very difficult. And I can tell you, this format has kind of have its consequences. And one of the concerned ones was the fairness of FIFA to these clubs. We all know these clubs have kind of struggled even to get their prize monies. I can tell you, SCV at one point complained about their prize money after winning the Southern Uganda Premier League the other season. And last season, it was Vipers. We don't know whether their money was paid. And again, you're coming up with the new idea. How do you expect clubs to come in and you're injecting 2.5 billion? Where did you get this money from? And this is not a format which kind of affects the already established contracts with these players, with the sponsors, with the TV rights. You see, it will make things to look a little bit very unique, and the consequence mostly goes to clubs. Those agreed sponsorship deals will have to be the contract has to be actually re-agreed. It's going to be a complicated thing for sure, I can tell you. And the aspect of the revenues is going to be one of the biggest things. And paying this money as quarterly, how often will you pay if you are still failing to pay the prize money to these clubs? How often are you going to pay this quarterly money to these clubs? It's going to be a complicated thing. I'm quite sure FIFA needed to revive this again. Probably see that they have to give at least 2 years to see that this kind of format is amended in Uganda. Maybe you can try it with other lower leagues, the 4th division, the regional league. You can try it, but at the Southern Uganda Premier League, where money is needed, it will be complicated for sure, I can tell you. It will be complicated. And this has been one of the biggest things that FIFA has done. And again, this format also makes clubs to have got that regular check-up of player system, that upgrade, that information that you're having. In case you have spent, let me say, in a month you have spent around 100 million, this kind of money you have to indicate to FIFA. Why does FIFA want to investigate clubs up to their spendings? What is the agenda? Does it mean that FIFA want to rule everything? See, if you want to rule everything, you invest in it, give the money to the clubs, and the prize money that you're being given to these clubs, the champion gets around 500. The lowest club gets 1 million. You see, sometimes the money that this club spends in the big league or the stuff going to bring is very huge, and the club that finishes the rock bottom on the 16th table, you're giving this club only 1 million, and the club that actually become champions, you're giving this club only 50 million Ugandan shillings or 60 million Ugandan shillings. What will this money do to these clubs? And you're not trying to limit the gate collections. You're making, the first phase to be only on one league affair. And the smaller clubs will never be benefited from this. Of course, they have got that small budget. They have got that little team. Of course, going for these away matches is going to be a little bit complicated for them. And it kind of favors these big clubs. But if FIFA can be influential to bring these people on board to see that they first talk about this thing again and again, probably it can click very well in Uganda. But if FIFA doesn't talk to clubs about this format, it will never work well in Ugandan football. I can tell you that one authoritatively. Of course, this format is very complex, and it's going to be difficult for clubs to adapt it, and it is going to be a stretching factor to these clubs, and it's going to be so much of a negativity to these clubs, and their liability share is going to be a little bit disorganized. You see, clubs will never be getting that actual beneficial part of it. What clubs will be getting will be totally minimal, and I'm quite sure with the influence now of the State House, probably could be seen a lot of changes happening so soon. Of course, this has been attributed to the performance of Ugandan football. that new format has been actually alleged that it will never be of a productive impact in Uganda. It can affect football in Uganda. So the State House is not trying to come up with that kind of agenda to see that this kind of format is kind of investigated, and the money that FIFA is injecting 2.5 billion. Where is it coming from? When clubs are complaining of the prize money. So those are things that have been invested, and I don't want to talk about that actually into length. In there, of course, it's not down to the boards of the FIFA who are behind the engineer Moses Magogo. Of course, we have got the regions here in Uganda. What now? As the region has got its FA, Kampala region has got its FA, even the Busoga region has got its FA, the Lango region have got FA. These people, the ESCOMs, have to come together. You see, come with a common agenda. Don't speak just because the president says we should amend this. Let's look at the balance of everything. Let's look at that aspect of getting your money from the FIFA daily, maybe monthly. Of course, that's 1 million that you get from FIFA as being the ESCOM. You see, let's not try to be a little bit rigid with the money, but let's also try to look at the benefits of this. Let's also try to look at the importance or the challenges of this to these clubs. Now, if you want to see that more clubs come into Uganda, if you want to see that players in Uganda become a little bit professional, leagues kind of get exposed, what you have to do is go with something which can make players very simple. This is a complicated format, and this is something that you copy it from another country, and when you look at the level of that country, even international, the country has kind of, in terms of rankings, it's not even at the top. Where is Belgium when it comes to CAF rankings? I mean, FIFA rankings, where is Belgium? Around 8th or 9th position there. And you're giving this kind of format here in Uganda. Now, this will not bring Uganda format down. When it comes to CAF rankings, where will Uganda be? Very, very actually disastrous actually format that I think will impact negatively to our clubs here in the country. Of course, let's leave that on that. I'll talk about a different story. Of course, it's kind of touching, and I can tell you, I can even speak 1 hour about this story. But let's leave that and that. I'll talk about other stories. Of course, the biggest one is about URA actually signing one of the monsters, one of the most feared strikers in Ugandan football. I'm talking about Nelson Sekatuka. Of course, Nelson Sekatuka is one of the most proven and talented and one of the electric wingers, or is a striker that we do have got in Ugandan football. And he has got no introduction in Ugandan football. He has got that reputation in Ugandan football, and he has kind of established himself to be one of the most reliable strikers in Uganda. I can tell you, he has been called to the national team of Uganda for around 6 times, for around 7 times. That's Nelson Sekatuka for you. He has kind of made it through in Ugandan football. And Alex Sebire at URA Football Club going for him services, it seems to be one of the biggest things for me. Of course, let it go of one of your most actually talented and prolific strikers in the names of Ivan Ahimesibire. Speak some sense and adding this quality into the team. Speak some sense about this team of URA. Of course, being an entity, the team needed to be competitive enough. The team needed to be balanced. Of course, URA are preparing so much to play in the Super 8. Of course, having this kind of a striker in your team will give you that vibe, will give you that energy of his pace, of his pace, of his actual brilliancy, of his pedigree in the league. Definitely, he will be having that actual spice in the team of URA. And I'm quite sure URA will probably be relying so much on Nelson Sekatuka. And Ivan actually Ahimesibire was one of the rivals actual strikers for them last season, but he wasn't all that prolific enough last season for URA. This was a team that I expected actually to win the time Uganda Premier League last season. Myself, of course, partner, I know Alex Sabira being a coach who has got that unique character in him, who has got that unique ability of nurturing players, who has got that flexibility in formation, who is a little bit authoritative when it comes to player management, and the dressing room, he always controls that one perfectly. I think a player of Nelson Sekatuka's caliber probably could be one of the biggest one for them. Of course, he has got the experience already into Ugandan league, and probably he could be adding a lot of spice for that team of Bright Stars. Of course, he has got that exposure already when it comes to continental in top, top east. If I can remember very well, he even equally went up to Morocco to go and play for a team in the names of Maghreb. down in Morocco. I can remember that one very well. In 2016, that was when a player in the names of Nelson Seketuka came to light, and everyone was singing about Nelson Seketuka when he was playing here for the Black Football Club. He was very excellent. When he was coming here for games against the Black, he was very excellent. I can tell you, Nelson Seketuka caught my attention those days. He loves to score in tight angles. That's Nelson Seketuka for you. And he is a striker who makes defenders a little bit to seki. He makes defenders to actually to torment. And he is a fighter. When you have a player of his caliber in your team, definitely you are graced with one of the biggest prospects in your team. And it will be seen. It remains to be seen whether Vipers Football, a team in the names of Uganda Football Club, can be important to assemble a team behind him to see that they have got their complete team when it comes to going forward. Of course, their actually attacking unit last season was not all that threatening enough. And with the transfer market coming down in Uganda, probably by around September, it will come down to its closer. And I'm quite sure Uganda Football Club will be looking into market, probably have some firepower up front to see that the team look to be a little bit balanced. They need to have that squad depth to remain very competitive in the league. Of course, we have seen Neck Football Club coming newly, and they're giving hard times to the giant teams of Ghana Premier League, the Vipers, the KTCS, the SVs of this one. Neck is trying to give them a hard challenge. So I expected a club like URA Football Club that has got that pedigree, that has got that experience of playing long. Moreover, they even won the times the league for a number of years already. They have got that experience, and with Nelson Seketuka, I think he will be a very good addition for that team of Alex Sabire at Vipers Football Club. Of course, he started his professional football career here in Uganda with a team called Hippo FC. Of course, he went to a team in the name of Paroline Football Club, and at Paroline, then he crossed over to Bright Stars. That's when he came to light. At Bright Stars, I can tell you, Nelson Seketuka was firing goals for fun. He was firing goals at all cylinders. And the best, the good thing with him is he has got that versatility with him. He is an all-rounder player. That's Nelson Seketuka for you. He can play for you on the right-hand side of the pitch, can play for on the left-hand side, he can play for you behind the striker, and he can as well play in the number 9. That's his perfect, actually, preferred position. That's Nelson Seketuka for you. An excellent player. And I can't wait to see him playing for a team the name of URA in the Southern Ghana Premier League. And I'll be monitoring his actual footsteps closely in the Football Super 8. Of course, the Football Super 8 is set to kick off very soon. And the Nelson Seketuka is one of the players who will be playing for a team in the names of URA Football Club. And it remains to be seen how he will be performing. And he has got that actual engagement with the national team for around 17 times. And again, he has kind of I've got a chance of playing for the for Ghana Queens in the Chan tournaments, and again in the Sakava Championships. That's Nelson Seketuka for you. He has got that actual experience already in him, and that balance he'll be adding it in the team of URA perfectly. Should I talk about Kava Football Club a little bit? Of course, I think I talked about them in the morning. For those who can speak Lugwara very well, you can still go back and track our actual my analysis always so that we did for for the Lugwara speaking people. I talked in name about Calvary Football Club. The latest that we're getting indicates that the Calvary Football Club has kind of brought in a new player in the names of a coach in the names of Jimmy Chindu. Of course, Jimmy Chindu is one of the renowned actual coaches in Uganda, and he mostly deals with the ladies football, and most notably he has been a coach in the team in the names of Noah Football Club. Of course, Calvary Football Club has already brought him on board to see that he will be taking this team in the Southern Uganda Premier League. They are made in the Southern Uganda Premier League, and they have given him that 2 years contract already at Calvary Football Club, and he has already given that renewal contract to Osen Julius. Of course, Osen Julius is a central defender. Most people normally call him here Akanzi. Of course, he has already given that renewable contract for him, 2 years contract. He has extended his contract already. And there is one player at the team of Calvary Football Club in the names of Anda Masabere. He is set to join a team in the names of Calvary Football Club very soon. That's Anda Masabere for you. And Okumu Rogers, together with a player in the names of Emmanuel Okets. all set to join the team in the next of Cabo Pocola. I will not talk much about that. Of course, I talked about that at length in Lugarati. I will never talk much about that in there. Of course, the big game that will be coming up today in the in the Premier League, of course, in the semi-finals of the Chan tournament, there are games that will be coming up. Of course, much of the time will be taken by the transfer stories. Of course, I'll be talking much about the transfer stories. Then I'll also be talking much about the Liverpool Newcastle story at the game that will be taking place at St. James Park. This is going to be a mouth-watering clash between the two teams. But let's first give some light about the game that will be taking place today in the Chan tournament. Of course, the defending champions will be facing what we call the two-time champions in the names of Morocco. That game will be at 8:30 p.m. East African time at Mandela National Stadium. I think by now, everyone in Kampala should be leading to Mandela National Stadium. The traffic by now is going to be so congested in Kampala right now as I talk. Of course, this is going to be one of the biggest games to watch. Of course, the first game is already ongoing between Madagascar and South Sudan at the Benjamin Parker Stadium down in Dar es Salaam. The game is already going on, and I can tell you the biggest one is the game that's between Morocco and Senegal. This game will be at 8:30 p.m. East African time. But this is going to be not an ordinary game. It's going to be one of the most entertaining and epic games to watch. I regarded it as a final before final. The game between Morocco and Algeria. Senegal. This is final before final. Of course, Morocco are the only nation that has defended the Chan tournament. Of course, if I can remember very well, in 2018 they won it. 2020 they won it. Then since that they haven't won the Chan tournament again. And Senegal are the defending champions to this. Can they defend it against two-time champions in the names of Morocco? It remains to be seen. But these are two great nations that has got players who play with a lot of maturity, players who play with a lot of vigor, players who play with a lot of mental strength, and the pressure. They always know how to cook the tempo of the game. I can tell you, here the team that will be under pressure should be sent. A team in the names of Morocco. Senegal has no pressure. They play extremely very well, but Senegal has to be double careful with this team of Morocco. Of course, Morocco has got some brilliant players in that team. Of course, Soumaï is one of the joint top scorers in the Chan tournament for Senegal. He has got 3 goals. Alan Okello of team Uganda Queens, and he who plays for Vipers Football Club, has got 3 goals in the Chan tournament. Can Souleymane Louimi make some amends here in the game? Probably could be seen a tough time for Morocco, but don't underestimate anyone. Of course, this is going to be one of the most entertaining games. I can tell you, these two teams have got that pedigree, they have got that fighting spirit in them, and above all, they are from the north. Morocco has got that history. Senegal has got that history already written, and it remains to be seen which nation will definitely come on top. But I can tell you, both nations play with discipline, both nations play with a lot of exposure, and they use a lot of what you call a mind game a lot. That's Senegal for you. They use a lot of mind game, and they always know what to do. I love one thing that the coach is trying to do. The coach seems to be a little bit flexible with the formation. When things are kind of very hard, he changes formation. I can remember against Uganda, he changes like 3 formations. He played the 4-2-3-1 formation, he played 4-3-3, and again he played 4-1-4-1 formation against Uganda Prince. That's the kid coach of Team Senegal for you. And the impact that he brought into that team kind of yielded for him fruit. Morocco finishes arguably in they come into this into the semi-finals, comes with a lot of question marks. Of course, they went into penalty shootouts against a team in the names of Algeria. They limited Algeria in the penalty shootouts, one of the biggest games. But can they actually eliminate a team in the names of Senegal in this kind of tournament. When it comes to CAF rankings, Senegal is up there. Morocco is up there. This is going to be a balanced game, I can tell you. Don't be surprised to see if this game goes up to the final, into extra time and it goes into penalties. But don't underrate a team in the names of Senegal here. I'm back in Senegal to beat a team in the names of Morocco. Morocco have got that sick defense, and that is where the big territory is going to be for them. Of course, you don't know Senegal has got that offensive and so much threatening front three. Those guys, I can tell you, they can give you actually headaches. The guy who was done is just number 11. His name that skipped off my mind against Uganda. He was excellently giving. That's after hard time to the light of Gavin Kizito, the ties of this world. He was giving them hard time, and eventually it yielded them the result against Uganda. So against a team the name of Morocco, Morocco has to be double careful against Senegal, who are kind of very disciplined when it comes to playing their games. Let's leave that I'm talking about the performance of Uganda Queens and the co-hosting countries that I'm talking about, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. These people have kind of done extremely well in my own view. Much as people are trying to actually criticize 102 nations here, but I can tell you, Uganda Queens, with that historical record that they set in the Sun tournament, it is already written in the history books. In front of their fans, and at Nampole, the Queens have done tremendously well in the Sun tournament. And East Africa, as such, they have given that hospitality to these other nations that already here in the country. It's only Kenya who have got that manyangas. Probably they were kind of summoned by CAF about their fans being so actually chaotic in the stadium. And eventually they got actually eliminated. Of course, they were playing under pressure. Of course, that's the pressure of hosting games. That is the pressure of playing at home. Of course, this is not a level where you have to be so serious. You have to be so disciplined. But those were the things that kind of affected after our performance as East Africa or as the co-hosting countries. Of course, they were pledges made. The pledges were not fulfilled to the players. It can easily drag their performance down. Of course, such kind of pledges can easily make players to get demoralized. Of course, when it's not fulfilled, it can kind of demoralize players. Keep some of these things silent. Maybe after the game, or after the end of the games, that's when you can come and surprise the players. I love what the president of DR Congo did last time. He always surprised the boys when the boys are extremely performed very well. And here in East Africa, we are seeing State House promised 1.2 billion for the cranes. Again, in Tanzania, the president pledging, Kenya as well. You see, it kind of demoralize the players, but I can tell you, the co-hosting countries, their Pomada project, kind of improved a little bit. It shows the level of growth in Ugandan football. It shows the level of preparation that we are taking as co-hosting countries, or as the Pomada project. Of course, new stadiums being amended, being approved by CAF to host this kind of games. Of course, this kind of visit comes with a lot of benefits. Of course, business-wise, people get a lot of money, and it will be one of the biggest things. So we have to see whether Uganda will be important to host the next Africa Cup of Nations. Of course, they are bidding. Of course, we've seen a number of stadiums being constructed here in East Africa. I can tell you, later there's a stadium being built. In Hoima, there's a stadium being built. So all these things are in preparation for what we call the Africa Cup of Nations. After Nations in there, of course, it will be. It is being reported that the Pomada project, the East African countries, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, they are also bidding serious to see that they wanted to host this. So we're going to see whether CAF will be in position to pass them right here in there. Of course, let's talk about the Premier League games. There were games played in the English Premier League. Of course, on Friday, Chelsea did beat a team, the names of West Ham United, by 5-1. Of course, Lucas Paqueta scoring that actually epic goal against Chelsea. Of course, one of the young stars in that team of Chelsea I'm talking about is Tavio, is making headlines in that team. I can tell you, Chelsea Football Club is trying very well in the see that they have got that actually big performance in there. And then On Saturday, Manchester City were walloped by teams Spurs in there by 2-0. Then Bournemouth did beat a team in the names of Wolverhampton Wanderers by 1-0. Brentford did beat a team in the names of Aston Villa by 1-0. Burnley did beat a team in the names of Sunderland by 1-0. Then Arsenal Football Club did put a 5-star performance against a team Leeds United did beat them at Emirates Stadium by 5-0 in there. And then on Sunday, Crystal Palace played 1-1 with the Nottingham Forest, Everton at the new stadium. And this is where I'll talk a little bit. Of course, Jack Grealish made a remarkable effort against a team in the name of Brighton at the new stadium in the names of Hill Dixon Stadium down in England for Team Everton. And it's a new record for them playing their first game 2025-2026 Premier League season in a new stadium. That's a new era for Everton Football Club. If they can be important to keep that level of momentum, that level of performance at the new stadium, is going to be one of the beautiful things. Of course, Pickford actually making that save against that penalty save against Dan Welbeck was one of the talking points. But I think the performance-wise, the teams really, had got that actually good performance in there. Of course, the last game yesterday did see Manchester United playing out a 1-1 draw against Team Fulham Football Club. One of the worst performances for Manchester United. Once again, Ruben Amorim benching a player in the names of Benjamin Sesko, a player that we thought was going to be given that after the straight after the after the spot to start for games. For Manchester United in what you call their starting lineup at Old Trafford. Of course, Ruben Amorim thought it very well that he first needed to adapt. He first needed to see the intensity, understand the physicality of the English football. That's why he's benching him. That's what he said. Of course, this is going to be a costly one for Ruben Amorim at United if he doesn't trust the boy that he has signed. I can tell you, you can't rely much on Brian Mbeumo. Of course, there are moments when you need a striker. I can tell you that chance that a player in the names of Mason Mount actually missed, a player in the names of Matis Cunha missed. Those are chances that a striker like Benjamin Scalba will never miss for you. Tap it at the back of the net. And then they had got one or two chances. They had got around 7 actually clear chances in the first half. Those are the moments when you need a prolific striker, you need a natural box striker. Of course, we have seen who will get taken at Liverpool. He's trying and he's working, so it is working for Liverpool. And at Arsenal Football Club, a player in the names of Victor Gyökeres is as well working, and it's working for them. This is something that if United doesn't, if Ruben Amorim doesn't improve on it, it will be a little bit of a costliness for him. He can easily be fired. That's Ruben Amorim for you. And it's going to be one of the biggest things. And I can tell you, there are already dilemmas in that team of United already. Of course, Brian Mbeumo matters giving those actual threats to defenders, but you need to have that B plan. When things are not clicking very well for you, why would you still go for a false number 9 when you have a striker in your team? You have got Benjamin Sesko, that fans are yearning to see that he has to prove for them. This is where you have to start the games on a high note. When you're starting games on a very low note, it will be having that, it will build that actual negativity feeling about you. Of course, Arsenal started it brilliantly. Manchester City started it brilliantly against Wolverhampton Wanderers. But against the Spurs exposed their weaknesses, and Pep Guardiola is seriously into the market, and he's looking for players. And I can tell you, if Ruben Amorim doesn't improve on that, probably his job at United will be at risk. Of course, it's going to be one of the biggest things for Manchester United. And let's talk about the biggest game that will be coming up today. Of course, it's going to be between Newcastle United up against a team in the names of Liverpool. This game will be at St. James Park, one of the noisy and one of the atmosphere that you will never want to play against, or you will never want to play in. Of course, this game will be at 10 p.m. East Africa time at St. James Park. The atmosphere at St. James Park is always very electric and very noisy. And I can tell you, it's going to be one of the biggest games to watch in there. Of course, this is going to be where the issue is going to be on Alexander Isak. Can Newcastle United recall him back? Of course, he said that he doesn't want to play for Newcastle United anymore. That's a player in the name of Alexander Isak. Is he going to be the player who will come in and make amends for team Newcastle United against Liverpool, who are his current admirers? It remains to be seen whether he will be adding that fury in that actual game against Liverpool today. If he can be adding that layer for Newcastle United, and if Newcastle can be important to beat Liverpool, it remains to be seen. But don't expect a player in the names of Alexander Isak to be in this actual in the game against Liverpool tonight. It's going to be one of the most complicated games, and I can tell you, it's going to be one of the potential future club for for Isak. Of course, he said that he wants to play for Liverpool. He has said that one already, and it's going to be so complex between these two teams to have got that kind of connection. When you have Isak playing for Newcastle United and Liverpool is willing to bid for him, and their first bid was rejected, it's going to be having that kind of attraction from the media, that kind of attraction from the fans, from both fans, even Liverpool and the Newcastle United. The fans will get attracted, and they will be wanting to see what will be happening in this game. Of course, they will want to give a damage to Liverpool Football Club. Much as Liverpool have got that decent record against Newcastle United in the Premier League history, Liverpool has been beating Newcastle United for fun. And we all know Eddie Howe being a tricky manager who loves to play against big teams. He always loves to give that hard challenge. Of course, we've seen big games ended 1-1, 2-2, 3-3. Of course, I can tell you, Manchester United suffered against Newcastle United at St. James Park. Arsenal suffered there. Manchester City has suffered there. Even Liverpool itself, I can remember there was a game that ended 2-2 between them. And this is going to be one of the most entertaining games, and fans will be pleased to watch this game in a very serious. It's going to be a dramatic affair at Anfield today. Expect a goal scoring game. Of course, these teams will be having a strong challenge within each other. I'm talking about Liverpool and Newcastle United. Expect the drama to be there at St. James Park. The fans will be there. The coaches will be having those reactions on the touchline. The players will be having those reactions on the pitch. It's going to be a team to watch. And let me take you to the team news of the two teams. Of course, for the home team, I'm talking about Newcastle United. Joe Willock is out for them because he's having what we call a calf injury. He'll be out for team Newcastle United. Lewis Hall will miss this match against Liverpool due to what they call a foot injury. He has got a player in the name of Alexander Isak. Has he refused to play for them, of course, he will miss this actual contest with the Liverpool Football Club. He will be out. It's going to be one of the biggest games to talk about. And I can tell you, for Liverpool Football Club, they are going to be without the service of Joe Gomez. Of course, he is still having that Achilles injury. He will never be available for Liverpool Football Club. Much as he was given that actual light performance against a team in the names of Liverpool played against, I think they played against Burnley. Yes, he was given that actual light reform for in that team against that the Liverpool played against recently in the opening match. Of course, I'm talking about Bournemouth. Of course, he played against Bournemouth, but he was forced to play through painkillers, and expect the play in the names of Joe Gomez to be out for Liverpool Football Club tonight. And playing the names of Jeremy Frimpong will as well be ruled out. Of course, he has got that actual hamstring injury, and he will be until the international break, which will be up to September. Of course, Ryan Gravenberch is back for Liverpool. Of course, he starts saying that he has got that red card that he picked against Crystal Palace in their last game. Of course, that has been that applied that he never played the first game in the Independent. That was the last game that he missed for Liverpool Football Club, and he is much more available tonight against a team in the names of Newcastle United at St. James Park. And the absence of Jeremy Frimpong in the team of Liverpool Football Club now has now brought in eyebrows. Of course, Joe Gomez is out injured. Liverpool is now left with the limited options in the right hand side of the pitch. Of course, this is now where you expect a player in the names of Dominic Szoboszlai, who is a little bit formidable when it comes to playing on the right hand side of the pitch, because he uses much more of the left hand side. The right side of his leg to play. Of course, likely he'll be playing in that game against Newcastle United. Of course, this is a game of high intensity. This is a game of high tempo. This is a game that needs experience. This is a game that needs that kind of bulliness. So expect Liverpool Football Club to have got a player of his caliber in that position in the absence of Jeremy Frimpong. Much as there's a player in the names of Conor Bradley, he can play in there, but this game is going to be too huge for a player of his caliber. He is still very young. You have not to expose him to this kind of tempo. This is a game that needs maturity in mind. So definitely Liverpool Football Club will have to go for a player in the name of Szoboszlai in that particular right hand side of the pitch. Let me give you my probable lineup that I think both teams will be looking forward to play against each other tonight. Let me start it actually with a team in the names of Newcastle United. In goal, expect a player in the names of Ramsdale to be in goal for team Newcastle United. Of course, he has been so eminent and he has been so positive ever since he made that switch from Southampton to Newcastle United. He is a player to watch. Of course, we have seen the actual glimpses when he was still playing for Arsenal Football Club. He was much more excellent. That's the player in the names of Aaron Ramsdale. He will be on stick for team Newcastle United. Then, you expect Livramento to be on the left-hand side of the pitch for team Newcastle United against Liverpool Football Club. He is a formidable player, and he is a player who will be causing a lot of offensive moves for Newcastle United. For Newcastle against Liverpool, he will be offensive. He's a very good player. He loves going forward. That's the Livramento for you. Liverpool has to be double careful with his moves. And then you have Kieran Trippier with that experience as well. This is going to be a game to watch. I can tell you, a game to watch in the English Premier League. And then the central defense partners will comprise of Ban alongside Ska. This is experience. This backline of team Newcastle is based on experience. Experience is going to matter much into this game. And then let's talk about the midfield three in a 4-3 formation. Jolinton will be playing alongside Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes in that midfield for team Newcastle United. And then the front three will comprise of Anthony Langa to the right. Then you have Harvey Barnes to the left. Then leading the lines will be Anthony Gordon, who has been also a target for team Liverpool Football Club. And he is going to be leading that line. Of course, this is going to be one of the beautiful games to watch. Let me give you my problem lineup that I think Liverpool start up against Newcastle United. Liverpool, of late, they love going with a 4-2-3-1 formation. Probably you expect Liverpool Football Club to go with Alisson actually in goal. Of course, he is the number one goal stopper at Liverpool. He'll be definitely standing tall in that goal line in there for Liverpool. Expect Dominic Szoboszlai to come in as a player to deputize a player in the names of Jeremy Frimpong in his absence. Of course, this is where you need experience. And he'll be there playing on the left, on the right hand side of the pitch. And then on the left hand side of the pitch, you expect a player in the names of Milos Kriket, a new signing from Bournemouth, to be in there. And then that central defense partners will comprise of Virgil van Dijk alongside Ibrahim Konate. And then the presence of Ryan Gravenberch will be very, very important for team Liverpool Football Club here. Of course, we did see against Bournemouth, they were kind of exposed. They looked vulnerable in the midfield. That secondary backup to the back line was not given, but a player of his caliber will be very pivotal for Liverpool Club against Newcastle United. Of course, he has been the brain behind Liverpool's offensive moves. That's Ryan Gravenberch for you. He is going to be a pivotal player. He'll be sitting in that number 6 role for Liverpool Football Club. And he'll be playing alongside the player in the names of McAllister. Of course, they will be making those actual runs in the middle of the pack. Then, the front three will comprise of Cody Gakpo to the left. You'll be having Mo Salah to the right. Then you have got a player in the names of Florian Wirtz behind Hugo Ekitike, who will be leading the line for Liverpool Club. It's going to be an entertaining game. I can tell you, the morale is going to be massive, and this is a game to watch. Personally, I'm a big fan of Newcastle United, and I'm a fan of Newcastle United. This is a game I won't miss. I won't miss any minute of this game. It's going to be one of the beautiful games to play. I don't want to talk about much about other games that were played actually in different lists. Of course, there are games that will be coming up in the Italian Serie A. Of course, Udinese will be playing against Hellas Verona. This game will be at 7:30. Inter Milan will be playing against Torino. This game will be at 9:45. Of course, in Spain, the game that will be coming up, of course, we have got Atletico Bilbao that will be playing against Real Vallecano. This game will be at 8:30. Of course, a team in the name of Sevilla will be playing against Getafe. This game will be at 10:30 p.m. There's one big game that caught my attention in Spanish La Liga. That's Real Madrid playing against a team in the name of Real Oviedo, a real derby. This is a game that kind of made a lot of headlines. Of course, Xavi Alonso, we all know, ever since he made that switch from team Bayer Leverkusen to Real Madrid, he had been assessing that team. He had been going with the back three. And against Real Oviedo, for the first time, he used back four. And in the game that they played against a team in the name of Osasuna, in their first game in the Spanish La Liga, remember, the player in the name of Trent Alexander-Arnold was given that strict upset in that game against Osasuna. But his weaknesses were exposed. And in that game, Real Madrid played the back three. And back three, we all know, Trent Alexander-Arnold has been used to back four at Liverpool Football Club. Matthias has got an offensive move, but tracking back timely becomes very hard for him. And the Spanish media has kind of come out boldly to criticize his style of play for Real Madrid. And against a team in the name of Real Oviedo, he was on the bench. And I can tell you, this is not going to be a big threat for him. And Xavi Alonso preferred a player in the name of Dani Carvajal in that position. And he played a player in the name of Antonio Rudiger alongside a player in the name of Dean Hutchinson in the center defense. And that one worked excellently well for team Real Madrid in the Spanish La Liga game against Real Oviedo. And he played a player in the names of Alvaro Carreras in the left-hand side. This is the format that Real Madrid has gone with. And this kind of format has not made Kylian Mbappe to enjoy his football at Real Madrid. Remember, he has scored 3 goals already in 2 games. That's Kylian Mbappe for you. He scored that only goal against Osasuna, and yesterday he scored 2 goals against Real Oviedo. Now, this is not a statement winning game for Team Real Madrid. It means playing back four will be more of an advantage to them, will be more of something that will give a backing to the defenders. Of course, playing back to the kind of exposes your weaknesses. How good you are, you'll be exposed. And we have seen a number of players struggling with back three. I think it's only Antonio Conte who has masterminded a back three very well. And in his maiden season at Chelsea Football, he won the English Premier League with Chelsea Football with a back three. And this kind of back three, when you're trying to implement it, you just try to implement it gradually in some sections. If you're a wise coach, you're supposed to implement in some sections. When you're doing what's called transition, Real Madrid is undergoing transition. So I expected Xavi Alonso not even to start a back three. But coaches of modern brain, coaches who have got that modern uniqueness with them, Xavi Alonso is one of them, Ruben Amorim is one of them. They prefer going with their actually unique style. But Xavi Alonso thought it very well that this is not going to help him. And he has returned back to the back four. And it has now worked for him perfect. He has scored 3 goals against Real Oviedo, which is something of a statement to talk about in there. But all in all, it's going to be one of the challenges for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who left Liverpool. When Liverpool fans were crying that he has to be part of the team, they wanted him badly to be with them. Of course, he said, my part is done for you. He has been a graduate actor, product for them, and Liverpool kind of benefits some amount of money from his services, and he has already crossed over to Real Madrid, and he is already starting that benching atmosphere at Santiago Bernabeu, one of the biggest things for Trent Alexander, one of the biggest players to talk about. Let's talk about transfers, and the biggest and the latest that is happening in the transfer latest is indicated that the Arsenal Football Club is much more into a player in the names of Piero Hincapié. Of course, Piero Hincapié is a player who plays for Bayer Leverkusen in the German Bundesliga. You remember, he was very pivotal pivotal for Bayer Leverkusen in their treble winning actually record in the German Bundesliga. Of course, you remember they won the German BFAB Pokal. They won what they call they won the what call they won the German Bundesliga. You see, and they won another small trophy down in Germany. That's like 2022-2023 season. That was one of the statements actually one of the biggest statements for a player in the names of in the names of Pierre. Hanky Pierre. Of course, he is very young, 23 years old. Of course, he comes from Ecuador. Of course, Arsenal Football Club is now looking at a centre back. Of course, Arsenal has added a number of players. They want to have that squad depth, and it looks like Arsenal is going to sign this guy. And I can tell you, the deal is kind of advancing so fast in this deal. Fabrizio Romano let's highlight something about this. Of course, being one of the authentic and fast giving transfer reporter, he has already given a hint about this guy in the names of Pierre Hanke. Of course, Arsenal Football Club, does they need, or do they need a player of his caliber? Of course, he comes with that kind of experience already. He has kind of matured in mind, and signing a player in the names of Christian Masquera at that centre back position is going to be one of the biggest one for them. Then again, they wanted to add another player. Actually, they wanted to have that squad depth. They want to have that balance in their team. They want to have that fighting spirit. Everyone has to fight for his position. Of course, we're not seeing Mikel Arteta now substituting players timely. He doesn't want his players to get tired. He doesn't want his players to get injured as it is. Of course, the two players who are sustained injuries already at Arsenal, Bukayo Saka, and they're playing the names of Martin Odegaard. But for Martin Odegaard, it's not a nasty injury. He can easily play against Liverpool Club over the weekend. In that big game at Anfield, expect the player in the names of Martin Odegaard to be there. But Bukayo Saka is going to be out for 4 weeks. Expect Bukayo Saka to be out for 4 weeks for Arsenal Football Club. But for Martin Odegaard, he's going to be very, very available in that game against Liverpool. This is just a mind game that Arsenal is just trying to play. That he's having that actual injury, that shoulder injury is not a nasty one. Expect a player in the names of Martin Odegaard to be fit against Liverpool in there. But this guy in the names of Pierre Hanke is one of the biggest players, and he still got a contract running with the team, and his release clause is £52 million. Can Arsenal Football Club be in a position to sign this guy with this amount? Of course, Arsenal has already invested hugely in the transfer market, spending around £200 million in the transfer market on big name players. Of course, Arsenal didn't sign a player in the names of Victor Gyökeres. They signed a player in the names of Christian Nørgaard. They signed a player in the names of Nuno Madueke. You see, these are not ordinary signings. These are big name signings. These are players who have got a big profile. And it's remains to be seen whether Arsenal Football Club will be important to prioritize and sign this guy. Of course, if they wanted to have that balance in their team, probably will be adding some spice in that team of Arsenal Football Club. Of course, the report saying that the Arsenal Football Club, they wanted to sign him when they've now balanced their books. Of course, they are saying that they wanted to sell some of the some of the players that they think they surplus to requirements at their team. One of them is Fabio Vieira. They said that if any tangible or any a good offer comes in, they can let go a player of Fabio Vieira. He can go in. Of course, they are also saying that Rich Nelson is the latest player that they can even let go. And a player in the names of Alexander Zinchenko is also being reported that he can easily go. And then Jakub Kiore is being mounted by FC Porto. So it remains to be seen whether these guys will be in position to quit. Of course, let me give you the games that this guy will be missing in the team of Arsenal. That's Bukayo Saka, of course. Bukayo Saka will miss Arsenal's home match against Nottingham Forest on the 13th of September. He will miss that game out for Arsenal Football Club. Then again, he will miss that game against Manchester City at Etihad Stadium on the 21st of September. He will miss that game out. Then the game that Arsenal will play against Newcastle United on the 23rd, on to the 8th. Again, this guy in the names of Bukayo Saka will miss this game out for a team in the names of Newcastle. For a team in the names of Arsenal Football Club. These are some of the biggest things that I thought I really needed to let you know. Of course, one of the latest one is Manchester United about Kobe Mino. There's already a huge pressure mounting on Ruben Amorim at Manchester United. Of course, Kobe Mino, since the start of the new campaign, he has never started any game for Manchester United. And he is just sitting on the bench. And it has been reported that Manchester United, Kobe Mino is not trying to push a move away from Old Trafford. He's saying that he wants to leave Manchester United. And it's not bringing attention from his agents, from his family, that Manchester United, if they want to see this guy staying put at United, they have to extend his contract. They have to actually up his money. Of course, Kobe Mino is earning around 150 million pounds in Uganda. I mean, at Manchester United. So they're saying that they have to up his money if he is to stay put at United. Of course, Chelsea is really showing interest in him. Of course, Chelsea badly needed his services, and we're going to see whether Chelsea is going to be lured his services. Of course, he is a loyal player. That's Kobe Mino for you. That's the fact about him. He cannot talk. He's a player who knows that he came through the youth setting of Manchester United, and he knows the history of Manchester United when it comes to developing young stars. Of course, we have seen a number of these young stars coming on board at United. It's going to be one of the biggest things. And Amorim did say that he has to fight for his position with Bruno Fernandes, which is going to be a hectic thing for him. You can't bend the player of Bruno Fernandes' caliber. Matches he missed the penalty against a team, the name Fulham yesterday, but this is going to be one of the blockbuster things for play in the names of Kobe Mino. He is still very young. He came to the limelight last season, and we thought this is going to be a huge prospect for Manchester United. But Ruben Amorim, with his style of play, that style of play doesn't fit the player of Kobe Mino's caliber. If Kobe Mino can go to Liverpool, if he can go to Manchester City, or is at Arsenal Football Club, he'll be a player who will be making headlines. At Spurs is already eyeing a move for a player in the names of Savino. And then at Manchester City, they are saying that they wanted to play in the names of Yeremy Hernandez from Deportivo La Coruna. So these are the players that Manchester City is talking about. My time is up. Up next is the Islamic Hour. I'm out of here. Bye-bye. My name is Senior Jero, the host of the show. This show is being sponsored by Sabrima Global Specials Limited. They're the biggest and the only sole sponsors of the show. I'm out of here. Catch me again tomorrow in there. Bye-bye.
We celebrate our nation, our future, Uganda, and believe in the beautiful game of football in Uganda. We believe in our mother body. Fufa, Fufa, when the boys and girls aspire to become stars of the Uganda Queens and the Crested Queens and the Sun Queens. Come on, our fans, our gallant fans, our sponsors, our dear government to support the beautiful game. One tribe, one family, one religion, one nation. It is our game, it's our country, it's our joy, it's our nation. The past and present stars, the fallen and living heroes, the coaches and referees.